Everyone laughed when a millionaire married an obese waitress, calling it a cruel joke, a reckless wager made by a man who had everything except a heart. They saw her as invisible, unworthy, and easily replaceable, never imagining that behind her tired eyes was a strength built from years of survival and silent pain. What began as a heartless bet soon turned into a story that shattered pride, exposed hidden cruelty, and forced a powerful man to face the emptiness of his own life. As the world watched and judged, no one expected the woman they mocked to become the one who changed everything, not by losing weight, not by seeking revenge, but by choosing dignity, self-worth, and kindness when no one thought she had any. The wedding hall was silent in a way that felt heavy, almost suffocating, as if every breath taken by the guests carried judgment with it. At the center of that silence stood a woman in a simple white dress that clung awkwardly to her body, her hands trembling slightly as she held a small bouquet of wilted flowers. Her size made her presence impossible to ignore, and the whispers that followed her wherever she went had already carved deep scars into her heart long before this day. Across from her stood a man whose name alone commanded respect, wealth, and fear. He was a millionaire, known for winning everything he ever chased, whether it was business, power, or people. No one in that room believed this marriage was real. They believed it was a joke, a cruel game, a wager made by a man who had never been told no in his life. And the woman standing before him, an obese waitress from a forgotten corner of the city, was the punchline. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and humanity, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel, because stories like this deserve to be heard by hearts that still feel. Her name was Clara, and she had spent most of her life learning how to disappear without actually leaving. Growing up, she was the girl people laughed at but never listened to, the one teachers forgot to call on, the one boys dared each other to insult for fun. Food became her comfort not because she loved it, but because it never judged her. When her mother passed away, leaving her alone with bills and grief at the age of 17, Clara learned that survival had no patience for dreams. She dropped out of school and took the first job that would have her, working long hours as a waitress in a small diner where exhaustion replaced hope. Every day she wore the same forced smile, serving people who barely noticed her except to complain, while silently reminding herself that at least she was useful. The diner was where he noticed her. Julian Crestwood, the millionaire whose life was a parade of luxury and empty victories, had walked into that place on a reckless bet made during one of his late-night parties. His friends, men who had inherited wealth and boredom in equal measure, joked that Julian could marry anyone and still walk away untouched. Someone laughed and said he wouldn't dare marry a woman like the obese waitress who worked at the corner diner. It was said casually, cruelly, without a second thought. Julian, fueled by arrogance and alcohol, accepted the wager without hesitation. To him, marriage was just another transaction, another thing to win. Clara never knew the real reason he approached her. All she knew was that a man who looked like he belonged to a different world began visiting the diner regularly, sitting quietly, watching her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. When he finally spoke to her about helping her, about changing her life, about offering stability she had never known, Clara felt something she hadn't felt in years: hope. She questioned it, doubted it, and almost refused it, but desperation has a way of silencing doubt. When he proposed, the entire diner froze, and laughter erupted from a few corners, but Clara's heart drowned out the noise. She believed, or maybe she needed to believe, that someone finally saw her worth.
The days leading up to the wedding were filled with confusion and fear. Clara tried to convince herself that love could exist even in strange beginnings. She worked harder on herself, not to change her body, but to prepare her heart for a life she never imagined she'd have. Meanwhile, Julian treated the entire process like a checklist, fulfilling obligations without emotion. He didn't notice the way Clara practiced smiling in the mirror, or how she cried quietly at night, wondering if she was enough. He didn't see the weight of her past pressing against her fragile hope. On the wedding day, as Clara walked down the aisle, her knees shook, not from nerves, but from the crushing awareness that she was being judged by every eye in the room. Julian stood tall and composed, his expression unreadable. To him, this was just the final step in winning a bet. To her, it was everything. But what no one in that room knew was that this marriage, born from cruelty and arrogance, was about to expose truths neither of them were prepared to face.
Marriage did not soften the world for Clara. If anything, it sharpened it. Moving into Julian's mansion felt like stepping onto a stage where she had no script. The walls were cold, the rooms too large, and the staff treated her with polite distance that barely hid their confusion and judgment. She was no longer invisible. She was painfully visible in a place where she did not belong. Julian continued his life as usual, attending meetings, traveling, socializing, leaving Clara alone with silence and self-doubt. Yet, despite the loneliness, she tried. She learned the routines of the house, greeted the staff with kindness, and reminded herself daily that this was her chance to become more than the girl the world had mocked. The first cracks in Julian's arrogance appeared slowly. He noticed that Clara never complained, even when she overheard staff whispering about her weight or background. He noticed the way she treated everyone with respect, from gardeners to housekeepers, as if they mattered equally. It unsettled him, though he didn't know why. His friends mocked him openly now, teasing him about his joke marriage, but the laughter didn't feel as satisfying anymore. The wager was technically won, yet something felt unfinished, uncomfortable, like a victory that tasted bitter. Clara, meanwhile, began to change in ways no one expected. She enrolled in online classes late at night, studying nutrition, psychology, and business, not to impress Julian, but to reclaim parts of herself she had abandoned long ago. She started walking in the gardens each morning, not to lose weight, but to feel alive. Slowly, her posture changed, her eyes grew steadier, and her voice gained confidence. She still carried pain, but she stopped letting it define her. The turning point came when Julian fell ill unexpectedly, collapsing from exhaustion brought on by years of relentless ambition. For the first time in his life, he was powerless, and it was Clara who sat by his bedside, day after day, refusing to leave. She handled calls, managed schedules, and shielded him from the world while he recovered. There were no cameras, no applause, no audience, just care. Genuine, unwavering care. Julian watched her from his hospital bed, confused by the warmth he felt and ashamed of the reason their marriage had begun. As he healed, the walls around him began to crumble. He started seeing Clara not as a symbol of a wager, but as a woman of resilience and quiet strength. He learned about her past, her sacrifices, her dreams buried under years of survival. And for the first time, guilt pierced his carefully built ego. He realized that while he had married her for a bet, she had married him with hope. But the deepest shock was yet to come. Clara made a decision that would change everything, not just for Julian, but for herself. She announced her intention to leave the mansion and start a foundation to support people like her, those overlooked and underestimated by society. She wasn't asking for permission or money. She was reclaiming her independence. Julian was stunned. The woman he believed he controlled was choosing herself. Clara's departure shook Julian in ways no business loss ever had. The mansion felt emptier than before, not because she had filled it with noise, but because she had filled it with meaning. For the first time, Julian confronted the truth about himself, about the emptiness of his victories and the cruelty of his wager. He realized that Clara had not been changed by wealth or status. She had changed herself, and in doing so, she had changed him. Julian sought her out, not with excuses, but with humility. He supported her foundation openly, using his influence to amplify her mission rather than overshadow it. Clara's work gained recognition, not because of her connection to him, but because of the authenticity of her vision. She spoke openly about body shaming, poverty, and the silent strength of those society ignores. People listened because her story was real. Over time, Julian's transformation became undeniable. He stepped away from meaningless competitions and focused on rebuilding trust, not just with Clara, but with himself. Their relationship evolved slowly, cautiously, grounded in honesty rather than illusion. Love, when it finally found them, was not loud or dramatic. It was patient. It was earned. The world that once laughed at Clara now applauded her, but she remained unchanged at her core. She never forgot the diner, the loneliness, or the pain. She used it as fuel, not armor. And Julian, the man who once treated marriage as a game, learned that the greatest wager he ever made was on someone whose strength he never deserved, but desperately needed. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe, because stories of resilience and humanity only grow when they are shared. Before the ending, we have a special request for you. Please comment below with the word kindness if you believe that people are more than the judgments placed upon them. The marriage that began as a cruel wager ended as a lesson written in humility and grace. And in the end, it wasn't the millionaire who surprised the world. It was the obese waitress who showed everyone what true worth looks like.